Hi, everybody. It's June 5th, 2025, and this is the weekly Backdrop Dev meeting. We've got a handful of folks here today to talk about development priorities for Backdrop CMS. We're in the nice, easy period of development where, the next release of Backdrop isn't until September. It gives us lots of opportunity and time to get some of the long-standing features that we have been working on moving forward. So we'll start off with some introductions. My name is Nate Lampton. I'm Quick Sketch on the internet, and I'm a core committer and technical lead for the Backdrop project. We've got three other folks here with us, and we'll go around the room and do introductions. We'll start with Jen, and then we'll go to Martin.
Sure. Jen Lampton, joining from Oakland, California. Go ahead, Martin.
Martin Price, Yorkshire Pudding Around Backdrop, joining from Northeast England.
Thanks. And then Ben.
Hello, I'm Ben. I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. I work for Giant Rabbit.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, for joining today and being here. There's one contrib update. Jen, do you want to take that?
Yep, we have a new release for the Contrib Mailgun module. So if you're using Mailgun as a SMTP provider, you can now use the module to integrate with it.
Yeah, that's
So
great.
thank you, Laren. Laren posted that one.
This is interesting. Just looking at this one project. Does this depend on SMTP module?
No, it says the same thing without SMTP module.
Oh, so it's a direct integration
Yeah.
using their SDK, perhaps instead of SMTP. So it probably provides its own mail sending class.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Huh.
I think
wonder,
I
mail.
haven't looked at it, but I think there's also opportunity for retrieving information about your mail sending statistics using their API. So I don't know if the module does that now, but there's opportunity for getting better data on the mail sending from your website in your website without needing to log into Mailgun.
Yeah. Just on this topic, this is something that I've expressed an opinion on from time to time, and it might be fun just to talk about it. I have often thought that the core email handling is not sufficient for today's world of email.
Yeah.
Because web servers just cannot send email anymore. They used to be able to, and it would get delivered. And then it went to a point in time where it's like, okay, well, it'll get delivered, but it might go to spam. And then it will get delivered in, but it will definitely go to spam. And now it's just, it won't get delivered. Like it will get eaten before it ever gets to your
Or
inbox.
like web hosts just straight up don't support it, like Pantheon and Amesmo are like, oh, we don't do mail sending. So it doesn't even go out anymore.
Yep.
But yeah,
Yeah,
I do
that's
know
great.
with
Yeah.
if you're on a shared hosting platform, sometimes they also offer mail services, and so they will provide better mail support than not, but it is sort of, variable by which server you get as to how likely your mail is going to get trapped in spam. But yeah, were you mentioning this because you were thinking about some kind of SFTP and core
Yeah.
initiative? Yeah.
Yep. And it looks like we do have an issue for this. It's issue 3199. And yeah, this is back in 2018. Opie opened it with Herb Duel saying we need a way to configure email for sending HTML and sending via SMTP.
Mm-hmm.
It should be much easier than the 777 setup with mail system. Then I actually chimed in and said something similar, saying that
Yeah.
we really need the ability to send email. Yeah, and so even though I mean we wouldn't need to be mail host specific, right? It wouldn't be like, we're integrating with Mailgun. It would just be we should support SMTP out
Yeah.
of the box. Seems like
Yeah.
that is um, the universal solution that would be like, if you're on shared hosting, if you have any kind of mail service, they almost always have SMTP available as an option. And that would just, yeah, make a lot of things a lot better. Let's see. So let's see. Everybody agrees. That's the summary of issue 33199 is
Yeah.
there's nobody saying that this should not exist. There are some questions about like should there be a contrib module? And of course there already is a contrib module. Just the SMTP module. So yeah, as usual, kind of the the ability for us to do this already exists. Most of the code already exists because we can pull from the SMTP module. And the challenge for all things like this is making it integrate into core in a nice, cohesive way rather than feeling tacked on, and also to be compatible with contrib, like or provide some kind of transition.
Mhm.
Now SMTP module, I haven't looked at it like from a deep dive in a long time. I'd be
Is
curious to.
simply a replacement, like it swaps out your PHP mailer class with its own.
It doesn't do anything else special. Like
Nope.
I don't know. Usually contrib module tries to cover every possible situation.
No, I mean
So
it
usually
allows
it's
you to provide your own like from address, reply to address and name that would like override anything that's specified anywhere individually in core, like the contact form, for example. But it doesn't, all it does is take that variable from system core that's like which class we use for mailing and swaps it out with its own. So mail system is a little better for Backdrop than it was for Drupal, but that has more of a like API kind of functionality that allows other modules to be able to send mail for their specific purposes, which can be really useful if you have like a newsletter that goes out from your website and also all of your transactional emails, and maybe you don't want them both potentially get, the transactional emails getting trapped up because of your newsletter. So I do think having that sort of API functionality would be really useful in core, but it does get a little bit messy just because of the way course mail handling already works, is not flexible. So yeah, that's probably all in that issue about how like different ways we can approach it. But there's also like right now in core, there's one class that handles both the mail formatting and the mail sending. And so one thing mail system does is it splits those into two, and it allows you to have a front end option like HTML mail and a back end option for something like SMTP. And that's really useful. I'm not sure anyone would understand the necessity for that separation until you have that use case. So that's also something that we would need to sort of handle as a graceful default in core so that you don't have to think about it until you get to a point where you need it. But yeah, there's a lot of option for improvement in core around mail.
yeah. So the
Uh,
go ahead.
What we probably also want is to have that switch, because I know when I'm doing local development and in Lando I use a thing called MailPit that basically captures any mail going out, but it won't do that if you're trying to send via SMTP. It'll still go to SMTP, but so you want to be able to switch back to the PHP for kind of local development.
Yeah. So SMTP module has that, but it's super sloppy the way that it's integrated, where you can just sort of be like, turn it off, turn it on. Yeah, I found that same thing with DDEV. We have MailPit too, and it's if you're using SMTP, it still goes out. So yeah, some kind of a master, don't send mail to my actual people option for developers would be really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done here. So
Yeah.
yeah, so you're right that is mail system a requirement for SMTP module?
No. SMTP module is one of the options you can use for a backend sender that you can use with mail system. So if you wanted a different front end sender, I don't know what they're called.
You mean
I'm not calling
a
them senders.
formatter, it looks like?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Well, I don't know what they're called in mail system. Maybe it's a format. But
Yeah.
yeah,
So totally. So we got this issue here where this is the default mail system that's in core, and this is the only mail system that's in core. And the methods here are format and mail. And this is totally a problem that formatting and
class
mailing
does both.
are often different jobs.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so if we added the ability to add SMTP, for example, it would still be just plain text SMTP, which, might be fine for core, but we would definitely want to make it so that you could use core's SMTP functionality with a rich text formatting.
Yeah.
This kind of makes me think that, yeah, mail systems concept of, splitting these things into two things would be a good idea. And it could just be
What-
like inside of here, we, check what formatting class should be used and then what mail system should
Sending.
be used.
Yeah. And we could do that in a way
Send-
that's backwards compatible because we can provide, plain text and not SMTP options in core and just replace this with calls to those. And then that way, when you update, nothing would change. And then if you wanted SMTP, we could have an option that's like enable SMTP sending for new installs. That could be on. Well, I guess you'd need to enter credentials regardless. So maybe it could put a warning on your status report that's like mail's not sending with SMTP. We recommend it, but not in error.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, all of that totally. Looking at SMTP module, evaluating its complexity, there's a submodule called SMTP OAuth, which looks like it's, adding quite a bit of complexity.
Yeah. That should probably stay in contrib. I don't know if it needs to become a separate contrib project, SMTP OAuth, or if SMTP module just could add like OAuth to its name and just, I don't know,
Yeah.
would still be
I mean,
SMTP.
yeah, you'd probably want to separate it out into a separate project.
I'm not sure that we need to make it so that this wouldn't work anymore. Like it could be the SMTP remains exactly as it is now. And the option in core, like after you update would be like use default mail handler. And then SMTP would be like replace default mail handler with SMTP handler, but default mail handler itself changes. And so that way it wouldn't be necessary anymore for people running Backdrop, but it would still work exactly the same way. So we might not, like this could be marked as deprecated, but I don't think we need like a new release of SMTP before we can make the core release. Just if that would be potentially problematic, it can be avoided.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I'm going to throw it out there, although I'm not sure that it's feasible. Another idea is that we could create in core an SMTP module that is the replacement, for the contrib module. And then modules that depend on SMTP would just continue to depend on SMTP module. And if the core module is compatible with the
I don't think
concepts of
there's
the contrib
anything
module.
that depends on SMTP module. I think all of the dependencies are on mail handler.
Well, this
Around mail.
SMTP OAuth almost certainly does.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
This is interesting
I
that it
was
also
thinking
depends
separate
on this
projects.
gauth module. So it's like specifically this SMTP OAuth is not generic. It's for Google only.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I know RGPiano had some problems with it recently.
Yeah, Google just changed their OAuth to require a app-specific password instead of regular SMTP credentials. So like last week or something, super recently.
Well, okay. So this is as expected. Like
Sounds
uh
simple. In
yeah, it
reality, maybe
sounds
not.
simple, but not so much like in practice. Yeah.
Yeah. It might
Yeah,
be
it's a
something
lot of
where we
work
could
to
find a
show.
like minimum viable integration um, option where it's like split the API into two and include a sender. I
Yeah,
don't know.
well, even a more MVP concept would be don't split it, make it so that there's just a core SMTP class, but it can only do plain text.
Yeah, I don't like that as much. I mean, that's what SMTP does. I use SMTP all the time, but
Yeah. And
it,
then the like merge mail system into core, separating formatting and mailing becomes a separate thing.
yeah.
And that could even be done, right? Where it's like, we add SMTP first and then later we split it. And so
But then we'd have
later,
to split both, right? Like we'd have to split the default mail handler and the SMTP handler.
right, right. But they would both use the same formatter for plain text or the same formatter for rich text.
Yeah.
So I don't think it would be, I mean, like look at the length of the format
Well,
function
that's
right
the
now.
plain
It's
text format.
right,
You
right,
should see how
exactly.
crazy some of them get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so this is the amount of changing that we need to do for the SMTP, you know, like if this is all that it's doing. It could even, I'm not sure that I'd like this, but the SMTP handler could actually extend the defaults and just not do anything to format at all and just provide an override on the mail handler
Yeah.
just to make it so that we can send email. Like that, yeah. So
How
that's
will
really,
you,
really
how do
tiny
you feel
minimum.
about putting alters inside methods on classes?
It's done in a lot
I
of
know we do it
places
for like
already.
block, but
Yeah.
is like it just because it's done? Like, how do you feel about it?
What's the situation, do you think?
I don't know. I was thinking like, we have this class called default mail handler. It could be that that class always handles mail by default in Backdrop, and we just changed the way the class works so that it would have a format function that would like pull its own formatter and then have an alter that's like you can alter it using default mail format alter or something like that. And then contrib module could plug in there instead
Yep.
of, yeah,
Yep.
needing to figure it out. So I don't know what's less, uh, what's more backwards compatible, like what would be less painful for to contrib to try and use. I don't know, but just a thought.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not quite sure either. Like where this let's see, hook mail, not mail. Hook mail is also bad in its own way, but oh yeah, it just did mail by ink. So yeah, backdrop
Backdrop
mail
mail.
system. Yeah, returns an object. So this is where it's like getting, yeah, okay, what is our mail system?
Mm-hmm.
And right now it's only one thing.
Yeah.
And it has to implement this interface.
Yeah. And another thing that like mail system does that we haven't even talked about, and I don't know if it's suitable for core, but it allows you to define specific instances where different handlers are used. So like if you don't need HTML mail for anything except your newsletter, you can be like contact form uses default, password reset uses default, newsletter uses HTML mail, and that kind of per instance switching of handlers is something that maybe remains in contrib, but it's also
Yeah,
something that
absolutely.
mail system would I don't know if that we need a core API for that or not, but it's just a thought.
Yeah. And I was gonna say that it seems almost impossible that you would want to send with a different email provider, like SMTP versus normal. But actually, when you said your newsletter, I was like, oh, actually,
Yeah.
maybe there is a scenario
I'm
where
doing
it's
that
actually
on one site. So all the like newsletters go out from like post.domain.com and all the transactional emails go from like the root. So yeah, it's helpful sometimes to split them.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. This seems, I mean, you can go really, really deep on it, but just focusing on the SMTP portion of things seems like it could be really pretty feasible.
It's a slippery slope, but yeah, I think there is a very small minimum viable product, and then there's the long tail of like, or
Yeah,
just keep going.
yeah. But I do want to make sure that if we add anything to core, that it's actually useful and people just don't end up installing SMTP module anyway, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or mail system anyway. But yeah, well, HTML mail is just a lot bigger problem.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, this I also agree with this. There's this library inside of PHP mailer, or sorry, inside of SMTP module that is quite suspicious to me. This thing.
It is PHP mailer. It's just slightly modified.
Right. Well, I'm saying like,
How do we do that in a way that's not
yeah,
providing
that's
a
not
hacked version of the same
that's not
class?
this, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, this is 2,300 lines.
Does PHP modern version of PHP mailer support SMTP natively? It seems like how can it not? Like maybe there's just a different way to do it now.
I think it's still at SourceForge. Like, you know, copyright is 2006. Oh, what I'm getting at. Oh, so we got next generation. This doesn't look very next generation. It looks like next generation circa 2005.
1990. Yeah.
Yeah. There's got to be some
Common PHP,
good
SMTP.
solution for sending
Yeah.
SMTP mail. Yeah, it's just doing a lot here. And I wonder if I wonder like how like the way that this is built out, if this is, you know, being more comprehensive than we need to focus if we're focused on, you know, sending plain text SMTP. Well, anyway, yeah, this would take some evaluating to look at solutions here. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that was a total aside. Thank you, Laren, for releasing the Mailgun module. Um, all right. So yeah, backdrop 1.30 follow-up tasks. We still don't have a blog post for backdrop 1.30. I logged into the sandbox, and you know, we've got our little news block there on the dashboard. It would be great if we could get our backdrop 1.30 release
Yeah, I
information
think
out
I
there.
said I was going to work on it last week, but then I ended up working on the documentation site instead because that was more fun.
Well, and you've also been working on the new homepage redesign.
Yeah.
Do you want to fill us in real quickly on the redesign of backdropcms.org?
Yeah, so it's up, I think, on beta.backdropcms.org. Actually, I'm not sure. That site might re-import a database from live every so often, and it might not be up right now. But it's sort of ready to go. We just wanted to write, yeah, this is it. We wanted to write a blog post to announce it, specifically thanking Giant Rabbit and Lullabot for their collaborative efforts on getting a design in. And then we have some next steps. There are other features that haven't been implemented yet in particular, we have a new footer, we have a new header. Those are going to go into the Borg base theme instead of into the Backdrop CMS org specific theme. And then we have like some of the text on here is going to be links in the future and is not currently. We're trying to build like sections of our showcase with a contextual filter in order to get those all hooked up as expected. But yeah, so there's more coming soon like this. These I think are good links, but the ones above are not currently links and will be shortly. These
Oh,
ones.
these guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is great. Yeah, looks so good. Oh, yeah, looks like oh, I guess maybe that might be intentional. There's some slight difference in the header size here between
It was
like,
not intentional. We had it fixed in an earlier version, but there's like a different grid system in use on the homepage, so I don't know how likely it is to get them back in sync.
yeah.
But, yeah.
Okay, yeah, and these yeah, different headers like the chat and
There's
stuff
a
like
new
that.
header
So
coming. We didn't want to
cool.
spend too much time making the old header work on the new design. New header coming.
Yeah, it's looking great. Yeah, I know that we had estimated this would be available, you know, right after Backdrop Live, but yeah, that's okay. You know, things take time.
There's
But looks
also
great.
some other cool stuff that's getting built to support the theme. Like there's going to be an API that we can use to pull out like the latest release of Backdrop. So right now we have this minor pain point of every time we make a new release, we have to manually update these numbers on the homepage. We won't have to do that anymore because it'll pull from API. And that also means that we can add the like try Backdrop buttons across all of our websites, and all of them will be able to have that version number update right away too. So that's gonna be in our new header. So yeah,
Great.
it'll be nice.
Okay, great. So coming soon. Soon is there a timeline?
Yeah, we're just waiting on a blog post, and I think what we might do is the blog post might be like, we have a new homepage design, thank you. And then we'll just get it out. And then after it's out, we can do a more extensive like explanation of why the design choices were made and how different elements have meaning to our community. And we can do that maybe once the header and footer go up, because then everyone will be able to see it as like a cohesive whole and understand the color choices and stuff like that. So yeah.
Okay, great. So we covered SMTP extensively. Thanks for adding to the agenda. The one issue that I had to discuss today is this one that Indigo Zella has been asking for code reviews on this and testing, keeping Cicaditor 5 up to date, which sounds so trivial, but it's quite challenging. Cicaditor 5 is changing the way that plugins are loaded in a dramatic way. That the current way is via dynamically linked libraries or DLLs, and they've deprecated that method and are slated to stop supporting it at the end of this year. So we need a solution, and Indigo Zell is right in her sense of urgency that if they're going to stop supporting it at the end of this year, then the September release, we need to really kind of have this addressed so that it will continue working, or we'll be able to continue updating Cicaditor for security reasons in 2026. So, Indigo Zella's solution here is, I'll say, novel in that she switches us from the DLL loading approach to UMD, Universal Module Definition, I think, which is supported by Cicaditor 5. And she achieves it with a mapping file that is surprisingly simple. So, okay, so when looking at this pull request, you can just not look at the build directory because that's everything that actually, and the dist directory, because this is everything that is coming from the compiled version. So it's just CKEditor itself. So the actual changes are much smaller. And so there's this CKEditor 5 prepare file where we are namespacing stuff between the way that the UMD project compiled it versus the way the DLL version compiled it. And it is shockingly, just like, rearranging some namespaces and then everything still works. So this is great. It also changes the way that our updating works, where we previously had been running a shell script that kind of manually concatenated stuff together. And now, so you can see we used to have this concat build script, which is totally deleted. So we're not going to be using our own kind of weird way of like assembling together one big build. Instead, we just run npm and let's see, where is it? npm install. It saves CKEditor 5. And then after that, we just copy out the UMD file that was created. So that's great. I do feel like this gets us, it does a lot of good things. It makes it so that, the build that we're using is less niche. It's going to be using a build that is going to continue to be supported by CKEditor 5 into the future, hopefully for a long time. And most surprisingly, it's actually still backwards compatible with all of the existing plugins that are out there. That seems kind of like a small miracle, quite honestly. Yeah, there's this little to do. I've got some code feedback to do here. I don't think that we should be remapping the icons here. As she notes, there's over 700 icons that could be potentially mapped here. But previously, the icons weren't consistently publicly available as in a namespace anywhere. And so I feel like we don't need to worry about the old locations and the new ones, that we should just be updating our plugins to point at the new icon locations. Because there's no way that we can do, we could do all of them, but I don't think that there's real value in that, because all of these icons weren't exposed publicly before. And so we'll just use the new public location rather than remapping them. The only thing that is a little bit, well, this is a little bit weird, like how we're namespacing the entire global variable. And this is because CKEditor changed the global variable out from underneath us. That they changed it from CKEditor 5, which is what we had been using, to CKEditor all uppercase letters, which is what they had been using in CKEditor 4. And so if you're running both CKEditor 4 and CKEditor 5 at the same time, this would have broken CKEditor 4. And so this rename spacing puts it back to what we had been using before, and then frees up the global CKEditor all capital letters namespace for CKEditor 4 again. I was trying to figure out if this bothers me in a significant way, but I kind of feel like it's necessary. And also, like, it's maintaining compatibility with what we have right now. And so I feel like this could be suitable, but it is going to be a little bit strange in that documentation going into the future is now going to start referring to this global CKEditor variable for CKEditor 5 instead of the variable they had been using before. So it's going to be confusing looking at CKEditor documentation, but I'm not sure that there's a whole lot that we can do about that.
Yeah, I'm just also wondering if it impacts people who are trying to build contrib plugins, because then the namespace is going to be different. That could be weird, right?
Yeah, well, it's consistent with what we're doing right now.
Right, but once the official one is actually uppercase CKEditor, that could cause, I could just imagine that might cause problems for people. So I wonder
Yeah.
if we make it somehow optional, or it only happens if you're running both CKEditor 4 and 5.
Yeah, I thought about that as well. Like maybe we detect if CKEditor 4 then delete the other variable. That would be an option. Uh, but I kind of wonder, like, having a mix of the same variable in two locations, like if that's just going to cause us a whole different mess. You know,
Yeah, I
where it's
think the
like,
problem is like, because, well, I haven't done any CKEditor 4 stuff, but I know in some of my custom CKEditor, I mean CKEditor 5 stuff, but in my custom CKEditor 4 stuff, occasionally I have to refer to window.ckeditor. So then I'd have to know which one I'm supposed to use.
yeah, I think what might be useful would be if we could evaluate how much work it would be to compile a standalone CKEditor 5 plugin for Backdrop under this new regime. Because this solves the problem for all of our core plugins and our contrib plugins, which don't use a compilation step. They're not using npm to compile our CKEditor plugins. Our CKEditor plugins in Backdrop are just, you know, just JavaScript files that don't have any level of compilation in them. But they are all, here we go. So if you look at them, so they all take the CKEditor 5 global variable, which won't exist in this new UMD setup without the compatibility file that IndigoZell has added here. But then, I mean, they reference the CKEditor 5. Oh gosh, that wasn't what I wanted. The CKEditor 5 variable like directly in a lot of places.
Right.
Not this, but yeah, here we go. Yeah, extends that plugin. Yeah, like it's that's where it's actually accessing all of CKEditor 5's APIs. Yeah. And so for plugins that are written like this, I think the solution that has been proposed works well. The question is how can we take a CKEditor 5 plugin that stands alone and use it with Backdrop? And maybe I'm getting ahead of myself in that this is already a problem, that it's already difficult to take a standalone CKEditor 5 plugin and just use it with Backdrop. And I think that this is kind of a universal problem with CKEditor still, that taking a standalone plugin and using it with Backdrop is tricky. But that's what I mean, that's what the new loading mechanism is intended to solve, and maybe we just won't get that benefit. The DLL approach, it was hard to add a standalone plugin, and the UMD approach that we're switching to is also hard to add a standalone plugin. There's another approach for loading that would make it easy, but it would break everything. And so
Fun.
maybe this whole concern about like how do we take a standalone plugin and use it with Backdrop isn't a concern that outweighs this approach, which doesn't break anything in core or contrib, which we should just be happy with that. So anyway, the call to action here is provide some more feedback, but also testing. Olaf came in and tested it, and found some valuable feedback. I went and tried it out, and I couldn't find hardly any issues. So I think this is looking great. But if anybody else has the opportunity, take a look at issue 6904. Provide some feedback either on the implementation or just test it out in the sandbox that's on the pull request. That would be appreciated. So the sandbox is down here. Click on the pull request, and then there's the sandbox builds. Okay. All right. Anybody have any other thoughts or questions on CKEditor? Okay.
Well, I know we
So-
had, sorry, I know there was some chatter in Zulip about maybe, and I think maybe in this meeting a month ago about switching to Tiny MCE. Is there anybody who's pushing for that, or are we just sticking with CKEditor 5 for now?
So it's funny, even Indigo Zella, who's the maintainer of the Tiny MCE module, hasn't been very keen on suggesting that we pivot wholesale to Tiny MCE. I think that at one point when we were looking at, are we going to need to have a toggle to switch between two different versions of CKEditor 5, the version that's compatible with Contrib, and then a new version that uses a new loading mechanism that's not compatible with Contrib. If we were having to ship two versions of CKEditor with core, which which always seemed, it would be very awkward and clunky. If that were our only option, our only route, then I think looking at Tiny MCE would be kind of a more desirable option than shipping two versions of Tiny MCE, or sorry, CKEditor 5, because then we'd have three versions of CKEditor and core between CKEditor 4, 5, and now new 5. So yeah, I think that it was like, if the situation is really that bad, then maybe Tiny MCE might be a less bad option than that. But now that we have this alternative approach, I think that everybody is more interested in not adding yet another rich text editor to core, and this achieves it in a compatible way. So now, going into the future, say once we drop support for CKEditor, drop the CKEditor 4 module out of core, I'm pretty open-minded about getting off of CKEditor 5 and CKEditor generally, because it's a real struggle. Like, that project is just moving and breaking things at a pace and in a way that's really difficult for us to work with them, and that our release cycles and our compatibility policy does not align in any way whatsoever with CKEditor's backwards compatibility and support cycles. Tiny MCE is much, much closer aligned, very long-lived APIs, has been very stable for a long time, but is also adding new features and functionality. So, looking back on it now, I think I can pretty confidently say that using CKEditor 5 was a mistake. But now it's what we have in core, and shifting off of it after we just shifted people onto it a couple of years ago. Yeah, it's a lot of changes. So I think the general sentiment is Tiny MCE, yes, maybe in the future, but not right now.
Definitely sounds like a lot of work. Yeah.
Yeah, we moved people from CKEditor 4 to 5, which was also a tremendous amount of work. So moving from CKEditor to Tiny MCE relatively is a lot less work, because there's already a working Tiny MCE module that does everything that CKEditor 5 does. So there's definitely a lot more readily available solutions moving to Tiny MCE. The one of the things that most gives me pause about moving to Tiny MCE, other than having 3 rich text editors in core, is the Tiny MCE contrib module isn't written in the same way as the CKEditor modules are, and that, like, the way you configure the editors is different. That it's not tied to a text format, that you have to set up the editor in one interface, and then in the text format you select like the pre-built editor that you configured in another place. So it's more like really old school, the WYSIWYG module, where they were, wait, maybe not even WYSIWYG module. It was there was some version way back in the day where it's like you would configure an editor totally separately from your text format. Then you'd have to align them. And I kind of prefer the one text editor, or a text format is bound to a text editor, and the configurations are just all tied together. At least on the sites that I built, I don't often have more than a couple text formats. And so the need to reuse a text or an editor configuration across multiple formats is just it's just very rare. So, okay. I think that's enough about CKEditor because we've got a couple minutes left to talk about bots. So Jen, do you want to summarize the question here?
Yeah, so if you are a relatively new contributor to Backdrop Core and you find an issue and you fix it and you submit a pull request, the tests don't automatically run. And we ran into this last year. Eli had asked about it. And that was specifically because the average person who adds a comment on a backdrop issue, average GitHub user, is not added to a role that is capable of running those tests. And a while ago, I think we had a bot that would make it so that if you added a comment anywhere, you would automatically get that role added to you, so that if you then followed up with a pull request somewhere, you would have permission to start the tests running. And I don't think this bot has been active for some time. And so I was just asking if Nate knew the history of that bot, if it was still around somewhere, if it was something we could work on, if GitHub's API has changed enough since then that we should maybe just start over. But yeah, just I didn't know the history there. And I was surprised last week when I learned that that wasn't happening. So
Yeah, the bot that we had was before there even was access checks on filing pull requests. So it wasn't actually approving the test runs. Actually, it was before there even was CI on GitHub. So it was webhook based, that when a person posted a comment, it would hit backdropcms.org, and then we'd have a script on that side that would then grant the user the documentation group access. So that would make it so they could add labels to issues. Yeah, that has been broken for quite some time. We moved Linode servers at one point, and that bot stopped working. That was automatically granting people the documentation group, which lets them add labels to issues. In the
was that
meantime,
something that ran on the server, like not part of our website code base? Is that why it stopped working,
yeah,
or was it? Okay,
yeah,
interesting.
it was totally, it wasn't part of the backdrop code. It was its own
Project.
had its own domain, I think, even like
Yeah.
subdomain. So, but that's fine because that's not the way that we would build it at all today. That now we have GitHub Actions and we've got runners on GitHub, that we should add something to the .github directory, an action to respond to somebody posting a comment, and then the GitHub action should actually just check to see if that user is a first-time contributor and grant them that role. So the way, yeah, that's the way I think that we should build it out.
Okay. I haven't
Now
worked on
exactly
GitHub
what,
Actions for a couple of years, but the last time I looked at it, GitHub could not affect itself. Like it couldn't add a role to a user on the project in which it was operating. And I don't know if that's changed since then.
I think it can, but you might need to pass in a secret to you might need to configure a secret for a user account that has access to do that sort of thing.
That
But
makes sense.
this goes to the question of granting first-time users the ability to run tests, because there's a reason why that check exists, because if somebody were to file a pull request that modified the GitHub directory,
Hmm.
then
Interesting.
they could use that secret token to do something on your site by running the pull request.
Isn't the pull request against a different repository than the comments?
Yeah, yes, there's also that because there's the backdrop issues repository that's separate from the backdrop core repository.
Yeah, so I think
So,
the GitHub workflow will be in the issues repository, right? Because that's where the comments are.
yes.
And
Yep.
so they wouldn't be able to
Yep.
file a pull request against that anyway.
Yep. Exactly.
So
So
we're
I think
okay
I think
right
I'm
now.
still, I'm in favor of just giving people the triage permission so that they can add labels, even if they're a first-time contributor, because that's the way we prefer to work. And most projects aren't like that. They've got a certain number of people that triage all of the issues, and we kind of prefer that everybody triages everything. So, but the permission to like somebody posts their first pull request and a core committer needs to go in there and approve it, I actually think we should keep that behavior
Really?
as it
Why?
is because of the danger of them running a GitHub action, even if our GitHub actions don't have. Actually, I'm gonna have to check now what secrets are in our core repository to make it so that users that are submitting pull requests, we don't get a random person coming in and modifying our actions, and because the actions will run on a pull request
Hmm.
that are in the GitHub
So they
directory.
could do something, for example, like add a new GitHub action that would like be a spam bot or something. And when it ran, it would start sending email or something bad on
Right.
a pull request sandbox, essentially.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
I think the other thing I suppose it could do is it could change a GitHub action that just completely overwhelms the Tugboat instances by creating much more tests and or much more things to do than is currently done, and could cause other problems just on our testing infrastructure in theory.
Yeah. It does look like we're pretty well safe here though, because I'm looking at currently I'm looking at our secrets that we have configured for the backdrop core repository, and we don't have any. There's no secrets in our core repository. Um, so that's really good actually. That makes it so that it's really unlikely that
That could be abused.
a pull request would be because sure they can modify the GitHub actions and have them run on pull requests, but they can't actually do anything. They can't get access to anything in an unusual way. But it's not guaranteed that it would always stay that way. So I'm gonna have to think about that. Like, let's come
Okay.
back to like if should pull requests require approval for first-time contributors. It
Okay.
doesn't. I mean, I guess I'm like saying it doesn't happen all that often, which maybe I'm like, well, it
It
would be
just,
nice if it did happen more
yeah.
often than it does. Yeah, but I also, any one of the core committer team can go in and it's really easy to just hit approve on those pull requests.
Well, I mean, we just had this instant where like we had to wait until a weekly meeting where somebody showed up at the weekly meeting and asked us about it, where like nobody even knew that was happening for
Oh,
weeks,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And
because
so,
nobody got notified.
right.
When people are notified, like if you mention core committers or a user, like we hop
But
in pretty
a new
quickly.
contributor might not know to do that, and they wouldn't. Maybe
Right.
that Eli knew we were having this meeting, but not necessarily someone who's just filing a pull request as part of their like security class might not know how to reach us. They don't even know at core committers is going to work. And so I think there is sort of like a barrier there that we could remove for new contributors if we wanted to.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna see there might even just be a setting on the repository that we could just change to just say let everybody run actions, and then it wouldn't require any bot at all. It would just be like just let everybody do it. But I'm gonna have to see if that's actually the case or not.
But that also, I don't know. I feel like if I was a sneaky bot owner, I would probably want to like work in the pull request area and not in the issues area where someone would be likely to find me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I,
another option is you could add that to like, isn't there a core contrib like template? You could say like, hey, if you're not seeing your test run at core committers. I mean, that's like a human
Yeah.
way to
Yeah.
fix the
Yeah,
problem,
I was
right?
gonna say, I think that would be fine. If you want to keep it more manual, I think you could put it in the template, or I don't know if you're able to edit the message that it shows you that's just like tests need authorization or what. It's just like that message is just confusing, and it would probably be good enough just to be like, this is what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
And we
also
can also put it on the, we have a core documentation page in our docs site. I feel like if we decide that this is how we want to operate, which I'm not sure we've talked about this before, let's just document it everywhere. And then at least someone who comes in might not need to know to contact us personally. They have that
ano-
information.
another kind of strange workaround that we could do. I'm not quite sure how accessible this is, but I do really like that GitHub makes it quite clear when somebody opens their first issue. Like it's like first time contributor, they open their first issue. I really like that they surface that in the UI so clearly. If there's a way for us to access that rather than calculate it, or maybe calculating is possible and not very difficult. When a person opens their first issue, we could use a GitHub action that's like on comment, check if this is their first issue. And then the bot actually responds first saying, welcome, I see this is your first issue. And then it mentions our like welcome team or core contributors or core committers.
Yeah,
to
that's actually really
specific
easy to do in
to
GitHub Actions
specifically
is to
give
get it
that
to add a
person
comment.
to
Yeah.
specifically give that person special attention as we
Yeah.
should
Yeah.
as a first-time
I think
contributor.
it even has first pull request. Like these are specific selectors that like first issue is one that it has. I think pull request is also first. So yeah, that I think would be easy. Have it say a message.
Well, anyway, there's some ideas. So anyway, the bots are dead. The old ones, that's fine, because we can build better ones now, and so they should be built as GitHub Actions. That's the short of it.
Okay. And actions on, in this case, if it's a pull request action, it goes on the core repository.
Mhm.
But if it's a comment action, it goes on the
issues
issues
repository.
repository. Okay. Do we want a message? I mean, I don't know. This is silver slope. Let's just solve this problem first. But I'm like, ooh, we could add friendly messages everywhere anytime it's their first
Yeah.
meeting.
I think just getting it on the issue tracker would be sufficient for now, because once people start interacting with that issue, then by the time that the user actually files a pull request, the core committers or welcome team or whoever will be interacting with that issue, and they'll see the pull request being created.
But most people don't start with creating an issue. That's like an advanced,
Oh, you're saying
right? They add a
there's a whole
comment
segment
or
of
they,
people that just file pull requests without issues.
yeah, at least I don't know. I've noticed like people who aren't part of the Backdrop community, they come in and only do a pull request. And I feel like it's an approachable way to get involved in open source, and we benefit from that a lot. And I don't know, maybe first time Backdrop people do open an issue because they're here with a problem. It's a different use case, but we do have a lot of people who don't create issues. They just work on existing issues.
Yep, I've
So
seen a
I think
good
first
number of
comment
things
and
go
first pull request.
unnoticed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
We
Okay,
could do
so
first
that's
issue too.
another task there. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, so is there going to be a meeting after this one, Tim?
I think so. I don't know, Martin, what do you think? Oh, Justin's not here. Nobody showed up with we were
Yeah.
maybe going to do kind of a show and tell, but I don't know if we have enough people. We'll decide that after this.
Okay.
You can end the meeting.
Okay. Yeah,
I've
we'll
got
wrap up
one.
then. Okay. Yeah, we'll wrap up. Thank you everybody for being here.
Thanks for
for
dropping
the
in, Eli.
discussions. And yeah, we'll see everybody on the internet, and we'll talk next week.